This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock on Wednesday, April 14th. Hard to believe it's already April 14th, almost halfway through the month already here. This has been an interesting past month. I'm going to be talking a lot about what we've seen in March. Also, kind of give you a little bit of idea about what we're seeing with inventory, which is the biggest issue. So starting off first, talking about what's happening across the country. And so this first slide is talking about what's going on across the country in year-over-year changes in certain key metrics, such as showings. And we're seeing this. So compared to a year ago, showings across the country are almost 50%. We see that. How many showings have our buyers agents been doing? They've been showing a lot of properties and, obviously writing a lot of properties and unfortunately not necessarily getting the deal on those properties. Challenge right now. Purchase applications are also up 39% over a year ago. Pending deals, however, are down 0.5% over a year ago. That's interesting. That's a very interesting data when you think about how much activity has been going on, but the fact deals are down. Existing home sales, however, are up 9%. New home sales are up 8%. And then existing home inventory is down 52%. We all know that. It's across the country and it's desperate times for a lot of people. And new home inventory is also down 4.6%. So again, comparing year over year, comparing March of last year with March of this year. So again, lots of showings, lots of purchase applications, a lot of buyers out there looking, but not a lot of, deals, pending deals are down a little bit. So we are looking also at what's happening with mortgage rates. Even though we're having a lot of mortgage applications being up, interest rates have started to creeping up. Compared historically, however, average mortgage rate of 3.18% is still phenomenally good. It's about what it was in June last year. We know that in January of 2020, mortgage rates were a little above 3.7, and then we had a little uptick, and then the down that happened all the way down until the very end of 2020, beginning of 2021, and the prediction was that interest rates were going to start creeping up, and they have, but it still is a phenomenal rate, and it hasn't yet discouraged buyers from putting in offers, but their buying power has becoming a little bit less than it was when interest rates were down as much as they were. So home sellers and home buyers have gotten really used to extremely low rates. Rates even in the 3 to 3.4% range remain extremely affordable by historical standards, which is what we were just talking about here. Very true. The difference here is year-over-year change in listings. So if we use a baseline of this figure right here, you can see that new listings, and again, this is comparing year over year. So again, early March versus back here, early March versus March at the end of the chart here. New listings have fluctuated. They're down though compared with early March of last year, and total listings are down tremendously. We all know things are selling as quickly as they hit the market, and overall the inventory levels are at historic lows across the country. This is an amazing chart to look at. So this is the year-over-year change in housing inventory across the country. You see all the really deep red states. That's where inventory is down over 60% compared to the year before. The next color is 45 to 60%. Of course, Oregon is in that, down 58.3% across the entire state. Interesting that the two states that are in blue, which is 0 to 15% down, Hawaii and New York, but everybody else significantly down. It's amazing to look at it. Overall, again, the United States is down in inventory by 52% compared with the year before. So housing prices nationwide recorded the largest annual and quarterly increase in the history of the FHFA HPI, which is an index. It's the Federal Housing Index. Low mortgage rates, pent-up demand from home buyers, and a limited housing supply propelled every region of the country to experience faster growth in 2020 compared to a year ago, despite the pandemic. No one expected this, and yet this is what happened. Which brings us to, why do we have such little inventory? And it goes down to a lot of things concerning building. What has happened with builders? If you look at what's happened across the country historically, going back to the 1970s, this is showing single-family housing units completed, so houses that are being built. So look at where we were in the 70s and 80s, 90s. The big boom happened into the run-up to the housing crisis, 2003, 4, 5, 6, and then everything started crashing. And then, of course, in the actual recession, there were a deficit of homes being built. We know that lenders canceled all building contracts. They canceled any opportunity to finance a new build. This is the reason why an anomaly like Northwest Crossing, which continued to be built during this time, was such a phenomenal exception to what was happening across the world. The reason why they were able to build was because they had financing within the guild and within the owners of Northwest Crossing. They financed the build jobs, which is why that place kept on being built during the recession. But again, across the country, we had this massive buildup during the housing boom and then the crash. We still have not recovered. We have 13 straight years of below the 50-year average of new homes being built every year. And I have to say, moving into the pandemic, what happened was a lot of people who are in the building industry, people who are suppliers, people who are in lumber, people who are in drywall, canceled orders, stopped things because they thought everything was going to be shut down, which is what's caused the latest housing issue connected with building not being able to keep up with the massive demand. And again, we haven't even begun to recover from this. I remember being at the OAR conference in Sun River a few years ago, and Lawrence Young, who is the chief economist of NAR, was at the conference there, actually physically giving a presentation. And the year, I think, was probably 2015, maybe 2016. And he talked about this deficit. And he said that across the country, there should have been 3 million new homes built during the recession just to keep up with the rising population growth within the country. And they didn't happen. And so we already started in a deficit of homes, and we, again, have not recovered from this. It's really interesting thing to think about, and that helps explain some of what's going on. And this was shared to me. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to pop up internet. Kathy Havermail shared this blog with me, and we all know Polish Homes. We appreciate Polish Homes. We have done a lot of business in representing buyers in Polish Homes. They build a great product here locally. They published this blog about a week ago, and they're talking about what's going on with new homes. And I don't know if how many of you guys have seen this, but I think it's really important for you to understand. This blog talks about, because of the pandemic, their businesses have had to adapt and change. And some of the changes. And they're talking about how there's low inventory of homes before COVID, and now we're in a low supply, high demand situation. Limited inventory is causing home prices to rise. And there's a lot of reasons why. As COVID entered the scene, uncertainty gripped the globe. And again, a lot of people, existing home sellers, pulled their homes off the market. Those considering selling their homes decided to stay put, and others grabbed their laptops and headed to more scenic, less congested areas such as Bend. So what happened in the early months of COVID, American factories closed for months and global supply chains broke down, causing supply shortages and sharp prices for home builders everywhere. Some of the items affected were lumber, appliances, resin, which is an adhesive for construction materials, electrical breakers, and lighting. And a significant impacts to container shipping from China to the United States have further strained the system. Also, there's a lack of laborers. Since 2008, we all know this, when the recession hit, home builders have seen a huge drop in the number of skilled laborers. People moved to North Dakota. I remember so many people I know moved to North Dakota to work in the oil fields. People who had been vendors, people who had been builders, framers, plumbers, they all moved there because there was work there. And now we haven't had a lot of tradespeople coming back into the business. So the laborers who are still here are stretched very, very thin. And also, there's now new codes and protocols, so new regulations that have impacted how quickly a builder can put out a new product. And so basically what's happening, and Polish is the one who's summarizing this whole thing, it's really challenging. And right now, this is significant. Homes will become available for sale only after they're further along in construction. So this is what Polish is doing now. They are no longer doing pre-sales. Think about it. If they do a pre-sale now, they really don't know how much that house is going to cost them in a year when it's finished. So with building costs escalating like they are, labor costs escalating, for a builder to lock in a price early on, they may actually be building that house at a loss for them as far as any sort of profit goes. So that's why Polish has taken this move to only be selling a home when they're really close to being finished. So I think that's a significant change to our industry. And I just had to share this with you because this is really something that we're seeing. I know we have a few new construction in place right now with contracts there. And in some cases, it's taking a super long time to get started because the city is really backed up on permits. But our buyers are sticking with it because right now, if they were to enter into contract on that same house, the price would probably be up another 10, 20,000. So by the time this house is finished, they'll probably have a lot of instant equity if these trends continue, and that's a big if, but everything is indicating that it will. So wanted to share that interesting little tidbit about what's going on locally with Polish Homes. So what's also happening here with cash out refinance? Cash out refinances have surged the highest level since the financial crisis. So people are starting to look upon the equity built into their home as a source of funds, and everyone's a little concerned about that. Oh, thank you, Sherry, for that comment. Guys, make sure your microphone is turned off. It looks like we're having a little bit of breathing. So just to give you an idea about what's happening with home equity cash out refinances, people who are refinancing at these lower interest rates and then taking the proceeds out in cash. There's a big surge on that. In 2020, we had 153 billion in refinanced cash out equity. But compared with the housing boom in 2006, which it was 321 billion. Now, I know, I've lived through this. For those of us who lived through it, we know what was happening in 2006. People were taking equity out of their home to buy something else. It could be financing a boat, financing a car, financing another home purchase. It could have been all kinds of stuff. People were using their house like an ATM. They really were. And we are having some of that happening again. I'm not quite sure what they're using those funds for, but it's nowhere near like it was in 2006. So you don't have to be as concerned about that as we have been in the past. I really think there's a safer thought process that's going into all of this, people who are pulling money out of their homes. So something to recognize here, this is the tappable equity of the United States mortgage holders. And that's surging. As equity is growing and growing in people's homes, tappable equity is the amount available for homeowners to access before hitting an 80% loan to value ratio. So say they're, the home is worth 100,000, tappable equity would be 80,000. So that's assuming there's no other mortgage on the property. Right now, we have over $7 trillion in tappable equity for people who have mortgages in the United States. $7 trillion. Again, higher than it's ever been, even when you consider the boom and, of course, the bust, but higher, more equity in homes than we've ever had before. Really significant here when you think about that. So regarding cash out refinances, 2020 was nothing like 2006. So when you look at the tappable equity, in 2006, we had 4.6 trillion. As we said, in 2020, 7.3 trillion. But the amount of cash out refinances, in 2006, it was 89%. In 2020, 33%. And the total cashed out in billions of dollars, 321 in 2006, 153 billion in 2020. Tappable equity, 7% in 2006, only 2% in 2020. People are not getting in trouble by pulling money out of their home. It's not happening. So the residential real estate market is on its biggest tear since 2006, just before the housing bubble burst and set off a global recession. Yet in nearly every meaningful way, today's market is the inverse of the previous boom. In the mid-2000s, loose mortgage lending standards enabled borrowers with poor credit histories to purchase homes beyond their means, sometimes with mortgages that required low payments in the early years of the loan. Remember the no-doc finances that happened, no-doc loans that people were given? People didn't have to prove that they could pay these things back. They just got a loan by walking in the door and signing a paper. It's not that way now. And now, with demand for homes outpacing new listings, buyer competition continues to intensify. On average, there were 4 offers per home sold in February. According to NAR's latest February Realtor Confidence Report, a monthly survey of realtors about their transactions. 1 year ago, there were 2 to 3 buyers for every home sold. The intense competition has led to double-digit price growth and properties selling in record time. To get back to a healthy supply level equivalent to 6 months of monthly demand, an additional 2.7 million homes should be on the market for sale. So to get back to 6 months supply, we need another 2.7 million homes. That's according to NAR. Here is a chart showing the average number of offers received on the most recent closed sales. And again, through the roof, 4.1 offers. We know in our market, we're probably far beyond that. I know of brokers who are saying they offered on a property that had 15 offers on it. I know some of our listings have received 10 offers, 15 offers. It is really challenging times for buyers. There has been a series of articles written here from Inman. I'm going to click on this one first. I don't know if you guys subscribe to Inman. I think it's a wonderful source of information. It is basically the place where you can get information on what's going on with real estate. So here's an article called Inventory Insanity: Why Are There No Homes for Sale in America? So it has been a very challenging time for people to be buying homes. And this was the first installment. It talked about how things are happening across the country. If you get a chance to look at Inman, I'm not going to read the article, obviously, but it's across the country. Bidding wars. This is Redfin sharing how many of their offers are facing competition. Of Redfin agents, offers submitted by Redfin agents, almost 61% of them are in multiple offer scenario, bidding wars. For sale inventory, this is from Zillow, and you can see inventory is way, way, way down compared to a year ago, and 0 is the baseline right here. There is a days to pending. If you look at that year over year, way down on that as well. It is a very interesting time. The other part of this article that this was the third installment that I needed to share too. This is the thought process of what's actually fueling the housing shortage. something I hadn't thought about. I knew the building situation. So half of this article talks about the problems with builders, the fact that they can't keep up with demand, the costs of the prices of everything are way, way up, all that. But the other thing it talks about here is I hadn't thought about investors. They're flocking to the housing industry. So we have people who are competing with people who want to buy a home to live in, competing with people who are investing, looking for rental property. And I thought, wow, I guess that makes sense. If you think about it from an investor perspective, someone who is looking for a place to put some money, the stock market has been doing great. However, it is really at high rates right now. There are some concerns for some people. Will it continue on at this rate, or is it going to start pulling back? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I'm not an expert on the stock market. But I'm also looking at interest rates. I mean, if you're going to put money into like a CD or a longer term CD, they're paying nothing. So what do you do if you have some money? And in this situation, a lot of investors are looking at putting their money in the housing industry. I hadn't even thought about that, but for people who are looking to buy a home, they may be competing with people who are investors who are buying up houses across the country to use as rentals. And hadn't thought about that, but it's happening across. It talks about what happened. A lot of this is happening in the country. So if you do subscribe to Inman, I would recommend you take a peek at these articles because I find them really interesting. The second one was talking about the frustration of brokers across the country, and we're living and breathing that, so we all know about it. And then the article from today is talking about the frustration of buyers. So here comes the big question. Is this like the last time? Are we going to have a housing bubble burst like we did during the housing crisis? Here's something to look at here. This is the annual home price appreciation at the years leading up to the housing crisis, when we had average annual appreciation of 10.3%. Here, leading up to 2020, the average annual appreciation has been 6.3%. Even the appreciation that we had last year, again, these are national figures, of 9.2%, is below the average that we were having in the years leading up to the housing crisis. Another difference here is the default risk in the mortgage market based upon the product and based upon the borrower. The product here, we already talked about the no-doc loans that we were experiencing in the time leading up to the bubble bursting. There was a lot of loans offered. In fact, I talked with a broker once who talked about, she called them the Texas loans. So in other words, build them big. You would sign up for a regular conventional loan, and automatically the lender would also throw in a HELOC. Two for the price of one, get a HELOC as well. So, and people would take the HELOC and they would use it to finance a boat or finance a new truck. So there was a lot of product risk in there. And plus we talked about people with the no-doc loans who did not necessarily qualify in today's standards for a home. They just showed up, signed a document, and got a house, whereas they may not have been able to afford those monthly payments. And then what has happened in the time since the housing bubble burst is the product risk is pretty much non-existent now. The loans that are being offered are very good loans. There's not a lot of risk involved in them for the lenders. And then the borrowers are also having to prove that they can afford the loans that they get. And so both the loans offered and the borrowers are qualifying and doing very, very well as far as leading us to a lack of default risk right now. So that's the thought process of having a good product and a good borrower. And again, another thing that's causing us to not think about this is the months of inventory of existing single-family homes for sale. So look at 2007. This is right when everything started really changing and we started seeing housing inventory grow. We had 9.6 months of single-family homes for sale in 2007. Here in 2020, 2.1 months. Here in Bend, 2 weeks. But this is the months of inventory of existing single-family homes. We're not at a point where we're going to start seeing a massive amount of product there right now. It's not just a seller's market, it's a super seller's market. This is an incredibly competitive home buying environment. And if you have anyone who's even remotely contemplating selling their home right now, I don't think there could ever be a better time to be a seller than right now. To get top dollar for your home, to have multiple offers push the price up, for home buyers being able to, willing to waive appraisal, to even waive home inspection, to give sellers rent-free time to move out of the home after it's closed. It's never been a better time to be a seller. It's a very frustrating time being a buyer, but it is a super seller's market right now. Something else, again, equity has skyrocketed. The average gain in equity of mortgaged homes right now is $26,000 over this last year. The current average equity of a mortgaged home across the country is $204,000. So of homes that have mortgages, they have an equity of $204,000. 38.2% of all homes are owned free and clear. There is no debt on these homes. These are people who really have paid off their loan. They want to move forward without any debt in their life. And then there's been a 16.2% increase in equity over the last year, totaling over $1.5 trillion. This is what's happening. Talk about a place to build wealth right now, which is real estate. It truly is. Here's the year-over-year change in home equity across the country. And you can see the green is the highest amount of equity gains. And here we are in the West Coast, Virginia, New Jersey, some of these New England states here. But again, Oregon's at $32,000 average gain in equity. Across the country, the gain is $26,000. Really a lot of gain in just 1 year. In just 1 year. So if you own a home, you're getting richer just because you own that home. Something to think about is, how do you explain this to a client? And this is a really interesting little thing to think about, little analogy here. So imagine a situation where you're trying to fill up a bathtub with water, but the drain is open and the faucet's on. So think about the faucet being on as the flow of sales. Those are listings coming into the bathtub. And the drain at the bottom is the sales that have been closed and are sort of going out the other side. And at any one point in time, the amount of water left in the bathtub is your inventory. So think about that. Listings coming into the tub and then closed house sales going out down the drain. So it happens in the housing market. As we've got the faucet open at the top, and we've got the drain open at the bottom. About once a month, we measure how much water is in the bathtub. Now, to keep this analogy going, the less open the drain is at the bottom, the more the flow in the top, the more inventory or water is left at the tub at that measurement point. And then turn it the other way around. If the flow at the top is slower, but the drain is wide open, the level goes down and there's less inventory. And so these are the dynamics at play. The inventory measure, as it's measured today, only measures 1 point in time. We look at a measurement at 1 point in time. And so right now, that drain is wide open. And the faucet is also open. But the amount of water in the tub is like non-existent. It's like in and out. But what's missing is a whole pile of water might have come into the bathtub and out the drain before you even knew it. And that's what's happening in our market. And so there we look at measures like days on market, how fast or what the velocity of the market is. And what's happening today in our market is the average days on market is 21 days. A lot of homes are flowing into the top of the bathtub and flowing out the other side before we even get a chance to measure them as part of the inventory. They're in and out. So let me get out of this one and go to what's actually happening in our particular market. So this is what's happening within our brokerage. March of 2021 versus March of 2020. March of 2020, we were starting to be pleasantly surprised that what we thought was going to happen during the pandemic wasn't. We were seeing some activity happening. We thought we were going to be on kind of shutdown mode and nothing really happening, but that wasn't the case. But comparing 2020 to 2021 for our brokerage, we had 20 listings in 2020. We had 26 in 2021, an increase of 30%, and volume increase of over 5 million compared to the year before. The big difference here has been our pendings. We had 31 pendings in 2020, but 71 in 2021, an increase of 129%. That is huge, huge. I shared with you last week that chart that showed for our closed here of 52 versus 24 the year before. Our closed volume in March for Ben Premier's sales made us the number 3 brokerage as far as volume. So we closed $39 million worth of sales in March, which was up significantly, way over 100% over what we did the year before. And our year-to-date figure here is we're now at 105 closings versus 84 in 2020. And 2020 was our best year ever. So we're on track if we can find inventory to exceed what we did in 2020. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, it's a challenge right now is, again, the inventory. So this is that chart that we always talk about that we show from Bend, and this is from Flex. It's Bend. It also includes Sun River, so it includes the 97707 area code as well. And again, you can see the issue here is we have active listings, sold listings and active listings almost equal to each other. We have listings coming in and they go out immediately. That bathtub has like an open drain. Absorption rate, 1 month supply. Again, in Bend, for Bend single family homes, it's 2 weeks. Sold to list ratio, people are getting over asking price. We know that. Days on market, way below. And then price volume, we have a lot of sales actually happening right now. Here is the figure that I make a comparison all the time to Bend single family residential, March 21 versus 2020. So this is the difference here. In 2021, we had 99 active listings. In 2020, 656. We are down 85% in active listings. Again, it's one moment in time where we look at this figure, but that 1 moment in time shows us we are significantly down in listings. New listings were almost equal, a little bit below what we were in 2020, but not a whole lot. The big difference here is, again, new pendings. We had 385 new pendings in 2021, up 103% over the year before. Solds are down a little bit over the year before, but sold volume is way up, 31, almost 32%. Average sales price is up 41% with median sales price. If you look at this figure, this is the median sales price for a Bend single family residential home. Last year was $452,000. It is now just shy of $600,000. That's a median sales price for Bend. No wonder people can't afford Bend. Who would have ever thought that would happen? And the percentage of homes sale, we're at 104% of list price. We're up quite, so again, homes are selling for over asking price. Last year we had a 3.3 month supply. This year a 0.4, which is roughly 12 days. So it is kind of a crazy scenario that we are dealing with right now. Oh my goodness. So I wanted to open that up to questions and thoughts about this and what you guys are seeing out there in the market right now. I know it's challenging. I've been talking with a lot of you guys, and you tell me how frustrating it is and how many times you've written like 4 or 5, 6 offers for the same client. Maybe get one to stick in here somewhere along the lines, which is such a win. It's such a positive thing. I have some brokers who are saying that Madras and Prineville are looking really good right now. We've got people who are looking in those areas to purchase, and it's easier, less competition in those markets than it is locally. Any thoughts for anything? Anybody else? You have some thoughts, ideas? Yeah.
Linnea, it's Kathy.
Yeah. Hi, Kathy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We just lost out on one. We were number 3. It went for, the property was listed, I'm trying to remember exactly. Let me look. It was listed for $625. We went as high as $650, and it went for $680. We, the appraisal contingency was waived, the home inspection contingency was waived. We were giving half the earnest money after approval of the prelim, and ended up in 3rd place.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. The other thing I wanted to caution people about is this. I had a neighbor that was going to list with me, and I told him to get into contact with his rental company to find out more. He didn't know very much about his lease, and told him about the 90-day requirement and such. And I called yesterday, and he informed me that they're going to be listing the home. So
The rental company?
with putting a client in touch with the property management company, because they said that would be the best way to handle it because of a problematic tenant.
So the property management company is also a brokerage?
Deschutes Property Management, so be careful.
That's why I always, when you have a client who's buying a rental property and they're looking for a referral for a property manager, I'd always recommend don't refer them to someone who's also a brokerage. Refer them to someone who does strictly property management, so something like that doesn't happen. Oh, Kathy, that's so discouraging.
Oh, it's breaking my heart. And he told me he wanted to spare me from having to deal with a difficult tenant. And I reminded him that I used to manage shopping centers for a living and dealt with tenants all the time. And I've dealt with 2 other sales where there was a tenant in place and it was not easy. So I just really, I asked him to get in touch today, but I think it's a lost cause. And I told him it really hurt because it's right across the street from me, and seeing someone else's sign go up in my neighborhood when I've advised him over years about what to do. So just be careful out there.
Yeah, definitely. It is challenging to sell a home with a tenant in there, and I know I've reiterated this a number of times. We have statewide rent control, which does dictate a lot of things of how we can handle things. But it does, and there's also the COVID eviction moratorium, which it keeps on being extended. But the sale of a home to someone who plans on living in it has not been impacted by the COVID eviction moratorium, and people sometimes get confused about that. A buyer of a home that has been used as a rental that has a tenant in place, the tenant is on a month-to-month, and they've lived there more than a year, they can be evicted from the home if the buyer plans on living in the property with a 90-day notice. That is still in place. That has not changed. If they're on a month-to-month and they've lived there less than a year, they just need a 30-day notice. If they're on a lease, that lease has to be honored. We have some sellers, however, who are willing to try to buy out their tenant. I remember during the recession, we had this thing called cash for keys for homes that had been foreclosed on that had a tenant in place. They would often, the bank that now owned that home would authorize their agent to go and say, we'll give you cash if you give us the keys, and get out ahead of time, ahead of your, this is before we had statewide rent control, but we would get them out by giving them money, basically buying them out. And we've had that happen successfully within our brokerage a few times. But just be aware that the statewide rent control is still in place as far as it goes with someone who's purchasing a home that's been used as a rental. So if the purchaser plans on using it as a rental and there's a renter in there, they have to keep that renter. They can't evict them. But if they plan on moving it into them themselves, either themselves or an immediate family member, or if the current landlord plans on moving into their home, or an immediate family member of the landlord plans on doing that, that tenant can be evicted with a 90-day notice if they've lived there for more than a year. So just be aware of that. Thanks for that information, Kathy, and that's really good. It's unfortunate it has to be a negative thing there. I like to hear positives on stuff too.
Well, and the worst part is I gave him so much advice and, you know, suggested paying cash to get them out early if that was an option, or, you know, just, I even told him to ask them if they were interested in buying, and if so, I'd represent him, you know, in that. I mean, I gave him every idea I could, have kept him abreast of the market and et cetera, et cetera. So I sent him one last email this morning as an attempt, because I know how to make it easier with a tenant in place. I don't know that Deschutes Property Management knows how to handle the transaction and make it easier for the renters, but I had a lot of great ideas to share with them on how to do that. You know, doing a pre-sale home inspection would be a great way to go. Then you don't have the buyer doing that. Holding an open house for the weekend and having set appointment times, you know, would be another way to ease their, you know, I mean, it's definitely tough for a renter to be out of the house and have all these showings requested. So, you know, do an open house from noon to 5, half-hour appointments and that kind of thing. But anyway, I think he's already committed to them, and he just didn't give me the chance to, you know, share all that with him until I called yesterday and found out the sign was going to go up today, but the son is saying he is sick. So they're dealing with that. So anyway, just, I never recommended.
I wonder how much experience.
Recommended Deschutes Property Management to him. So.
Yeah, I wonder how much experience Deschutes Property Management has on selling in this market to multiple, you know, how good they are dealing with multiple offers. And
well, that's just it. I wanted to share all that with him too, and what to expect. Plus, he told me the listing price, and I said, I can tell you right now, it should be higher than that, and I could put more money in your pocket. So we'll see.
Okay.
Anyway.
Very good. Thank you. Does anyone else have something to share? I know I've talked with a lot of you guys about, about what's happening in the market. It's always such a win when you get your client into contract on something. Do we have any other haves or wants? I mean, we all want inventory. And I know a few of you have completed the Fairhaven challenge. That was the thing that I had sent an email out about last week that CORE had sent out. It was for fair housing. It's a little challenge that's done through NAR, and it's entertaining. It actually is entertaining. It takes maybe an hour and a half to complete. And I know a few of you have done it, and you've enjoyed doing it. So if you're interested in participating in that, just feel free to. I'll resend the link. I might just resend the link anyway to let people know about it. It's something that's helpful to know about, and you learn about it through just kind of thinking about how fair housing impacts our lives, and you can kind of through the scenarios kind of see, do you have any sort of hidden biases yourself maybe, or are you able to pick out hidden biases in others, maybe not so hidden, discriminatory practices and stuff. It's a good educational tool. I found it interesting myself when I did it. Also, just to be aware, we are still doing floor here. We are having activity out there. I know people are having that chance to meet with people outside. I know we're in the next restriction down for, we're not in full lockdown again. Hopefully that won't happen. But we are dealing with a little bit more restriction as far as COVID within our area. But we're still functioning here. Any other haves or wants or questions or statements or anything you guys want to share? If so, just unmute your mic and let me know. Okay, if not, I am done for today here. Just let us know if we can help you with anything. We're here. Thanks so much.